Hello everyone, welcome back to German Girl in Kent. I don't really know, but as you have probably read in the title of this video, I just bought a house. I said before that I am leaving London, which I have now done. I've been out of London for 1 week and 2 days now, and I bought a house. And I thought today I'm going to tell you a bit more about how I bought a house, why I bought a house, and the process of getting a mortgage, especially as a non-British person in the UK. So as I already mentioned, I now live in Kent in a town called Rochester. I'll tell you more about Rochester another time. I've only been here a week, like I said, and I have got a lot of exploring yet still to do, but I will definitely make a video about that at a later date. But yes, so I bought a 3-bedroom Victorian terrace. I did not buy this all by myself. I bought this with another person, but we are joint tenants, so we each own 100% of the house. So this is why I'm going to refer to this as my house going forward, and that I bought it because I did buy it, so it's my house. I got my phone here because I took some notes about the mortgage process. So first off, I wanted to quickly talk about why I decided to buy a house. If you are new here, I've been renting in London for nearly 8 years prior to this. I think my last flat was my 7th flat in London that I had been renting. I will show you footage of my last flat and what I paid there very soon, but basically I just got fed up with the prices of rent and just how hard it is to find good landlords, and it's just difficult. And I always wanted to get on the property ladder. I definitely want somewhere where I can change things and really renovate and just, you know, just own somewhere. And I really wanted more space. I didn't necessarily want 3 bedrooms, but this is just how it worked out. But I definitely wanted 2 bedrooms, and renting a 2-bed in London in the area that I was in would have been quite expensive and would have meant that I would have had to spend a couple £100 more a month on rent. So I've been wanting to buy for a while. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to buy. I actually made a video about it earlier in the year, which I will link in the little info thing, which I think is here or here, I don't know, and I'll link it below. And I actually said in that video that I was not going to buy prior to Brexit, but as Brexit keeps getting pushed back, I just made the decision that I'm going to disregard Brexit. I'm just going to buy now, because even if prices are going to go down and we are hitting a recession, I'm not planning on moving anytime soon, and all the money that I would have sunk into rent during that time is still going to be more than I lose buying. At least that's how I thought about it, and I'm planning on staying here at least 5 years, if not between 7 and 10, so hopefully by that time we are back on track, whatever happens, but you never know. So mortgage, once I decided that I wanted to buy, I obviously knew that I had to get a mortgage because I can't afford it outright. And I did a lot of research, I have to say. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube about how to get a mortgage in the UK, and it made me quite paranoid about credit checks. And at the time I was actually working in a job that was a fixed term contract, which also online everywhere told me that you can't get a mortgage on a fixed term contract. And also, because I had been made redundant at the tail end of last year, I actually was unemployed. I wasn't claiming benefits, so I was living off of my savings, and I lost quite a lot of money living off of my savings for a few months. So my savings were quite depleted, and I didn't actually have a 10% deposit for the type of property that I was looking at. So I was in a really bad position, you would think. And I would have waited longer to get a mortgage, but what made me really want to get a mortgage is my landlord. So if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know that I had a pretty difficult landlord in my last flat, and something happened where well, I don't really want to get into too much detail, but basically he just came into our flat without saying anything, without asking, and then we had a bit of a word fight, and he kind of like verbally abused us and slammed doors and things. And yeah, that just made me think, I don't trust this person. They have keys to my flat and I want to leave ASAP. So timeline of buying a house. First of all, I didn't know where to buy. I was looking in London, I was looking commuter belt, but nowhere really spoke to me. I had looked at a 2-bedroom flat in Rochester last year in December, just for you know, research purposes, but I decided against it because it was a leasehold flat and I really didn't want to buy leasehold. I kind of knew I wanted to buy a Victorian house, but I didn't know where yet. But I kept looking at new builds in London as well because of Help to Buy. I talked about Help to Buy in the same video that I also talked about not buying before Brexit. So I was kind of just looking. I wasn't really going into houses or many viewings, but I was looking online, and it was just very depressing because London was just so unaffordable, and where I could have afforded it, it was very far out or in areas that I didn't necessarily want to live in, or it would have been a really difficult commute to work. So that was just a no-go. But basically what happened is, so it was early May, and this is when I contacted an IFA, an independent financial advisor. You don't have to do this, but I would really recommend doing it. My financial advisor was actually quite expensive. I think I paid him £500. But you only pay this after you have your offer accepted. But basically, yes, it's expensive to get an IFA, but so worth it. So when I went on bank websites and calculated how much money I could borrow, it was very low. It was much lower than I expected. And when I went to my financial advisor, they have different access. They can like run different searches and checks and things, and he found me a lender that would lend me way more than I had been able to find online. And within 2 minutes he got me a mortgage in principle from this lender. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yep, got your mortgage in principle, so you can now lend up to X amount and go for it. And I was just like, wow, okay. And at the time, again, I did not have a 10% deposit, and I was on a fixed term contract that was meant to run out in about 5 months. So, but got a mortgage in principle. Then on the 6th of May, I was on Rightmove and I saw this Victorian terrace house in Rochester. And I went for a viewing 2 or 3 days later. And I really loved the house. It was a 3-bedroom house. It had a cellar, it had a converted attic, it had 2 reception rooms and a conservatory and a garden, and it just had everything I wanted. It was about 15-minute walk to the station, and I just knew I really liked this house. So after the viewing, I went into Rochester town for a drink, and I just knew I wanted the house. So I put an offer in straight away, which I don't know if you're meant to do that, but I put an offer in which was ever so slightly under the asking price, and 1 day later it got rejected. So they said, no, the vendor wants the asking price. So they were like, oh, you can now offer the asking price, or otherwise it's going to an open house in a few days. And I was like, okay, let's go to open house. So I basically waited it out, and the open house happened over the next weekend. And then the Monday after, I called in to say, hey, did anyone make any offers yet? And they said, no offers so far. And I was like, hey, just so you know, my offer is still on the table. So I kind of didn't budge. The reason I didn't budge is because it was at a threshold for a bonus that I could get, so I didn't want to go over the threshold, so I could still get that bonus. So yeah, so I waited that day out as well, and then they called me again in the evening and they said, oh, there are now 2 offers. And they wouldn't tell me at like where the offers were at money-wise, so I didn't know if they were higher or lower than my offer. And they said, okay, we're now going into like a final offer round, so make your best offer and then they will decide tomorrow. So this was kind of like a psychology mind fuck basically, because I didn't know if they were higher or lower, or if I should go higher, or if I would lose it. So I went in at the asking price at that point, and I said that's my best and final offer. And then mid-May was, so the day after, they accepted my offer, and it was really surprising because I was, for some reason I was really sure that they were gonna reject it, but they accepted it. And apparently one of the reasons was that when the estate agent showed us around, the agent liked me the best, so that was nice. But yeah, we just had a good chat basically. So one day after that, we chose a solicitor. I'm switching between we and I because I didn't buy this house by myself, but again, it is my house, so don't mind that. So we chose a solicitor the day after the offer got accepted. Solicitors vary in price a lot. We went with quite an expensive solicitor, I have to say. I think the solicitor was like £1,500 or something altogether, which I know is a lot, but I have no regrets. The solicitors were great. They were always available to talk. They were really quick in responding and just had no issues with them, so would highly recommend going maybe with a more recommended one rather than the cheapest one. On the 16th, the official application for the mortgage was sent off. So I had this mortgage in principle, which is basically just the bank saying, oh, if all these things work out, we will technically lend you this money. So on the 16th of May, I said, hey, these are all the things I have, please give me money. So this is when it got a bit tricky, I have to say. A few days later, the bank that I wanted to have a mortgage with came back and they had a few questions, so queries basically, and I was expecting that. Like, my financial advisor said this might happen because you're in a weird situation where you're on a fixed term contract and a lot of other things. So they came back with this super long list of questions, things like, oh, how are you going to get into work if you're moving out of London? And other really specific things like, oh, why did you withdraw £200 on this and this day 3 months ago? Like, they go through all of your transactions and they want to know everything. So I sat down a few hours one evening and just replied to all of those questions. But basically what it came down to is they wanted a written thing from my work, basically saying that it is likely that my position would get extended or made permanent. Now, I could have gotten this, but I was also in the last stages of applying for another job. So it was a bit of an awkward time, but basically I got offered a new job right in the middle of my mortgage application. So I accepted a new job that was a permanent job, and then I sent my new work contract to the bank, and luckily they accepted it and they were like, okay, fine, you're now permanent, so we have no more questions about why you're on a fixed term contract. And that basically solved everything. But it was really risky because you're not really meant to change jobs while you're in a mortgage application, but luckily it worked out for me. So on the end of May, the mortgage offer came in. So this is the bank saying, yep, all good, here's the offer, we offer you this much money for this much deposit for this and this interest rate, do you accept? Obviously, yeah, I was like, yeah, give me the mortgage. Then also at the end of May, we did a survey on the house. So it's recommended that before you buy a house, you get a survey done. You can get a variety of surveys. There is just the standard survey that the bank will usually do for free. This is so the bank knows that they're lending on a house that's at least worth what you're paying for it. I went for the middle survey, which is called a home buyer survey, I'm pretty sure. And that came back, I mean, it's like 80 pages of stuff about the house, and there's always stuff wrong with it. So it's kind of like a traffic light system where it's like red, yellow and green. Green meaning nothing is wrong, yellow meaning, oh, you should look at that, and red needs immediate attention. And this is a Victorian house from circa 1905-ish, they think, and yeah, there's stuff wrong with it, but nothing flagged up as like being really bad. So basically I called the surveyor, I was like, what do you think, would you buy this house? And he said, yeah, I would buy this house, I think the price is fair, but there are these and these things that you need to look at pretty soon. And I was like, okay, cool. So that was good. Then came a really kind of stressful period of money laundering stuff with the solicitor. So in the UK, I don't think it's that strict in Germany, I don't know, but you need to prove where all the money comes from that you are putting into the deposit. So you need to basically have a trail for it. You can't just be like, yeah, I got these 10 grand here. You have to be like, yeah, I got this from work, I saved this over this and this time, or hey, this was a gift that I got, or where does the gift come from? And it's just a very, very long process. So that took, I think that took about 2 weeks to get that all sorted. That was one of the most stressful things. Then there was a period of time where they were awaiting info from the vendor to start drafting the contract. So when you get towards the end of a sort of house buying process, there are two main events. One is exchange of contracts and the other one is completion. So we were just waiting for the contracts to be drafted so we could exchange. Then once the contract draft reached our solicitors, which was middle of June, so quite a lot of time had passed now. Our solicitor finally carried out searches, which is where they basically search the area for like any recent floods or other environmental issues, and that all came back fine. Oh yeah, also once the home buyer survey results came back, the solicitor had to check a few things on the survey, so that took another week or so, and unfortunately they actually unearthed something else whilst they were doing that, and that was that the house was underpinned in the 90s, which is something that we didn't know, the estate agent didn't know, but the solicitor is legally obliged to tell the bank if they find out something like that, because banks don't like lending on underpinned houses. If you don't know what an underpinned house is, it means that the foundation at one point was reinforced, most likely due to a flood or a pipe bursting or something like that. And it can be difficult to get home insurance on an underpinned house, and again, banks don't always like lending on it, or sometimes they just like to lend you less on it because they think it's worth less. So that was a very, very stressful time, because the solicitor had to talk to the bank, and basically it was up in the air if they would still offer us the mortgage. So if they had said no, actually if it's an underpinned house, we are not lending you this amount, that would have been really bad, because we might have lost the house and we might have lost all the money we had already spent. So that was very stressful. It was 10 days that was up in the air, but luckily in the end the bank came back saying, we don't care that it was underpinned 30 years ago, it's probably fine, go ahead. So that was all good. So then they set a completion date in early August, and by the way, yes, we exchanged in that period as well at some point. So once the issue was fine and the mortgage was still going through, we exchanged at one point, and then they set the completion date for early August, and then we completed in early August, yes, and then we moved in the middle of August, and it is now August the 17th or 18th or something, I want to say. I'm kind of losing track of time because I moved house and I'm just kind of living in boxes and everything is very stressful. But yes, we completed last week and I'm now in the new house. I've been here again a little bit over a week, and it's all very, very surreal. So my first mortgage payment will be the 1st of September, and yeah, I now have a mortgage and not rent. So my mortgage is actually over £200 less than the rent in the last flat was, which is just mental. I'm planning on overpaying a little bit because it's a 30-year mortgage that I got. I only got it because of the fact that I did not have a 10% deposit. I'm planning on remortgaging eventually. I've got a 2-year fixed term rate at the moment, and then I'm looking to remortgage to something a bit better rate, and I'm also looking at actually paying it off much faster than 30 years. It's just the term that worked out. But yes, so this is the very long and slightly confusing story of how I bought a house. My next video will be a house tour, an empty house tour. I filmed it when I first came in on the day that we moved, which was 2 days after completion. And I'll just show you around a little bit, and yeah, I really hope you will enjoy that, and I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions about mortgages and things, I'm not a mortgage advisor, I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you my experience, so feel free to leave that in the comments below. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in my next one. Bye.